right, so let's talk about bisectors. Remember, a bisector divides an angle or a segment in half, and the two new angles formed are equal, or what we call congruent to each other, or the two new segments formed are equal or congruent to each other. Okay, so remember, just when you cut something in half, you make it into equal pieces. So here, this segment here is a bisector of angle ABC, so that would make this angle congruent to this angle, and that's how we mark the angles congruent. We put the little arcs in them. So now when I look at this picture, I know that this angle, and for the sake of this, we'll call this angle 1, is going to be the same measurement of angle 2 because that's what a bisector does. It cuts it in half to make two equal pieces. Now over here you have a segment bisector. So the segment bisector, which would be line DC here, is cutting segment AB in half. And so that means that AM, so segment AM has to be congruent to segment MB, and that's why these segments are marked with the little red tick marks. So when you see the tick marks, that's telling you that the segments are congruent. When you see the arcs, that's how you know the angles are congruent. Okay, and so another way to look at this is M has to be the midpoint of AB because this is the where the bisector actually cuts this segment in half. All right, so we're going to go through some examples. And so just when you have these examples, you need to always mark the picture with the given information. When they tell you something is a bisector or you know something is congruent, go ahead and mark it in the picture. Kind of gives your brain a clue to say, oh, these two pieces are equal to each other. Okay, so let's go through this. So it says if line N, so this line here, bisects segment QR, and QP is 3x plus 5, and PR is 5x minus 19, find x. All right, so there's a lot of information here, some stated explicitly and some that is implied because you know definitions. So we know that line N is the bisector of QR, then we know that QP is congruent to PR. And because we know they're congruent, we're going to go ahead and mark them. Now we also know that QP is equal to 3x plus 5. So we're going to go ahead and mark that in the picture as well. And then we know that PR is 5x minus 19, so we're going to go ahead and put that in the picture as well. So now that we have all the information diagrammed in the picture, marked in the picture, we need to use it to set up an equation. Well, now that we know that QP has to be equal to PR, and we know the expressions, we know we can set those equal. So we can do 3x plus 5 is equal to 5x minus 19. And so now it just becomes a thing that we need to solve the equation. Once you know what pieces are congruent, you can start solving. So now we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. And now we've gotten down to a two-step equation, so then we're just going to add 19 to both sides. And then we'll divide by 2 to figure out the value of x. All right, so in example 2, we have if ray UW bisects angle TUV, then the measure of angle TUW, and that's what that little m in the front means, the measure of angle TUW is equal to 13x minus 5, and the measure of angle WUV is equal to 7x plus 31. You want to find the value of x. And again, like we talked about, you always want to make sure you mark your picture. So if we're going to do that, we know UW bisects this angle. So UW bisects angle TUV. So we know that each side is now congruent. So make sure you mark that in the picture. Okay, now we got to fill in what information we know. And so I'm going to make this line a little smaller so I can write. So angle TUW, which is this side, is 13x minus 5. And angle WUV is 7x plus 31. Oops. And now we need to find x. So what do we know about those two pieces that are marked? They are congruent to each other because we had a bisector. So if they're congruent, we know we can set them equal. So we have 13x minus 5 is equal to 7x plus 31. And now we're just going to solve that. So we're going to get all the x's to one side, move the numbers to the other. So again, we've moved the x's to one side. And now we're going to move all the numbers to the other side. And so after solving, we found that x is 6. And also just make sure you answer the question. So we know our question is to find the value of x. We found that, so now we know that we are done. All right, so example 3 says if ray MO bisects angle PMN, and the measure of angle PMN is 74 degrees, and the measure of angle OMN is equal to 2x plus 7, let's find the value of x. Okay, so while we're doing this, we need to go ahead and make sure we mark our picture. So we know that ray MO, which is here, bisects angle PMN, so bisects this angle here. Then we know that this angle is congruent to this angle. So we go ahead and mark it, so now we know which pieces are congruent to each other. Now this says the measure of angle PMN is equal to 74. So P to M to N, let's be careful, that is the big angle, so I don't want you to miss that. Let's see if I can make this a little smaller highlighter. So PMN isn't one of the halves, it's actually the whole angle. So we got to make sure when we're doing this that we actually know which piece we are dealing with here. So we know that the whole angle over here, so I'm going to just kind of do it like that. That's supposed to be that little squiggly thing, is equal to 74 degrees. And then we know that angle OMN, so start off with O to M to N. So this piece of it is 2x plus 7 degrees. And then they want us to find x. So let's stop and think about this for a second. Can we set the 2x plus 7 equal to 74? Well, in this case, we can't because 2x plus 7 is half of the whole angle. It is not equal to the whole angle of 74, it's half of it. So we can do this a couple of different ways. If we know the whole angle is 74, then you know that each piece of this has to be 37 degrees. So this is 37 degrees, angle PMO, and then angle OMN is also 37 degrees because both of them would have to add up to 74. And then so what we know is that 2x plus 7 has to equal to 37. So we have that, and then we can just solve this one. Minus 7, minus 7. So we get 2x equals 30. And then we can divide by 2 on each side, and we know that x is equal to, and so now in solving this, we know that x is equal to 15. Now we could also look at this another way. Instead of figuring out that each piece is equal to 37, we would know that both of the little, if we know that angle OMN is 2x plus 7, then we also know that angle PMO is also 2x plus 7. And then so if we know that both of those half angles that were made were both 2x plus 7, we can now do 2x plus 7. So if we did the 2x plus 7 plus 2x plus 7 equals 74. Or you can just do 2 times the 2x plus 7 because you have two of them equals 74. Then we know that they should solve those either way, and you can still end up with x is equal to 15.